Our third lecture in our biodiversity unit is about the theory of island biogeography. If we look at the objectives, one of them is to be able to describe island biogeography and to be able to describe the role of island biogeography in evolution. So basically, if we look at island biogeography, it's a study of ecological relationships on islands. Now, it doesn't have to be a literal island. It can be, for example, a habitat island in New York City or in a national park that is surrounded by developed land. That is a fairly large island. There are two basic rules about looking at island biogeography. The larger islands are going to support more life. The larger the island, the greater this ecosystem diversity. The greater the ecosystem diversity, more food and habitat resources, more biomes. There's going to be more niches. In other words, more roles for the organisms to play. The second rule is that for islands that are close, they're going to have more species than if they're farther away. Why? Because it's going to be easier for the organisms to get there. They're not going to get tired or get lost. The more colonizing organisms, the more genetic diversity that there's going to be. If we look here, we can see in the top graph that as you get larger and larger islands, you're going to get more and more species, as seen by both the graphic and by the graph. If we have to look at the bottom one, you can see as we get the graphic, you can see as you get farther away, there's less species there. Also with the graph, it says the same basic thing. Larger islands support more species. There's more economic diversity, more niches, larger population sizes. Why? Because there's more places for them to live. Therefore, there's going to be lower extinction rates because there's not going to be as much competition because there's more places for them to live. There's a positive correlation between the size of the island and the species richness. If we look here, this is basically saying that as you got increased, these are actual islands. And if you look at their various sizes, there is a direct correlation with the size of the island in kilometers with the number of species that naturally inhabited it. The distance to the mainland means there's going to be a higher species diversity. Why? Because there's easier for the critters to get there. However, sometimes the species will be able to get there from island to island to island. Even so, it's going to have fewer and fewer species the farther it is to get away. Why? Because it's harder to get that distance away. If there's more migrations to the island habitat, there's going to be more diversity and larger population size. And again, there's an inverse relationship between island distance and the richness of the number of species that live there. The farther away, the fewer the species are going to live there. Evolution on islands. They have limited amount of space and resources, and therefore there's going to be pressure for the species to adapt. Therefore, there's something called adaptive radiation. One species gets there, but there may be 20, 30 different niches, and therefore when one cousin is different from the other, it's going to be able to fill that niche and may lead eventually to different species. What happened in the Galapagos is one species was blown over from the mainland, and cousins and whatever had different types of beaks. Therefore, they were able to eat cactus flowers or seeds or insects or buds. And therefore, they evolved into different species. A single colonizing may end up with having hundreds and hundreds of descendant species because they adapted or radiated out from that one species. So, practice. Can you describe the process of colonizing an island habitat? Can you describe how an island's distance from the mainland influences the number of species that will colonize the island? And these learning objectives, can you finish these?